Welcome to Ready Layer 2 with me, Small. This is a podcast for the founders, innovators, and experimenters building the future of Web3 on Arbitrum. Hey everybody, welcome to the Ready Layer 2 podcast. I'm your host, Small, and today I'm joined by Sage from Kuroro Beasts. Sage, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having us, Git. Excited to be here.
Yeah, man, excellent. So on this show, we always cover founders, and we're typically trying to share how they're bringing something to market. It's a lot of go-to-market strategy, how are they getting attention? But I want to take a slightly different tact with you here today, and that's because about 2 months ago, you put out a post on X that said, people only see about 5% of what we actually do, speaking as from the standpoint of a founder. All of that kind of behind the scenes, the day-to-day, the kind of the in the weeds kind of work that needs to be done to bring any project to market, let alone a Web3 project. So that's what I want to dig in here today is your experience building Kuroro Beasts on that front and how you've learned to execute through that, tools you've used, et cetera, et cetera. To set us up, I do want you to just give the audience a little bit of the background. Just tell us, what is Kuroro Beasts? What are you building?
Yeah, of course, Kuroro Beasts is a creature collecting gaming ecosystem. So we have this beast, this setting for our lore. It's a mystical island that people find where this lost culture once had inhabited it. There's this mystical beast with magical elements and powers. And on top of that, we build different games and experiences that use this foundational layer of the creatures and of the shared lore as the foundation for these experiences and games. So that's basically what it is. The easiest way to call it is like a creature collecting gaming ecosystem. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very cool. And let's dig into your background just a little bit and just talk about how you got here. What were you doing before Kuroro Beast?
Of course, yeah. So my background is super varied. I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a software engineer. And before starting Kuroro, I was working as a tech lead at a Silicon Valley startup called Synthesis School, which is a NetTech startup that teaches kids through games and simulations. Super cool startup. Actually, the genesis of it is Elon Musk. It was the school that Elon had in SpaceX for his kids at Astra that he created. The teacher that created that school, Josh Lamb, he actually, when the last kid from Elon graduated the school, he had a lot of offers to add software and make it turn this education model into a product, a larger scale product. And basically he decided to do it, and they started this startup with a friend. And it's a really cool concept. The educational model, I find it amazing. And that's where me and my co-founder, we were both working there. We got our first exposure to building games because the methodology for teaching there is through games and simulations, which kids participate in.
Okay.
So that's my background. Is varied.
Lawyer and software engineer. That's an interesting combination. I'm a developer myself. I've worked with a ton of developers. I don't think I've ever come across one that was also a lawyer. How did what came first and how did that transition happen?
It's a rare combination, but it can get even crazier than that, to be honest, because even before finishing my law degree, I was a professional poker player for over 7 years, professional poker player and coach, online poker player. So the story is I started in law school and I was very bored with it. And we have the online poker boom. I'm old. I'm 30, about to be 37. Yeah, back in 2010 or a bit earlier than that, 2008, the poker boom started. I started playing in school. A lot of people, a lot of smart young kids started getting into this game where you could make a lot of money. It was really fun. You could play it online, so from everywhere. And I ended up dropping out from law. And I pursued a career as a professional poker player. I played for over 7 years as a professional poker player, sponsored a poker player and coach. So it was a lot of fun. And I had a pretty successful career as a poker player as well. And eventually the FBI and the Department of Justice shut down the access to US users and the entire market crashed.
Yeah.
So it was okay, we got to find something else to do. And I went back to finish law school, worked as a lawyer a couple of years. Clearly, it was not for me. It confirmed my fears. But it's still a pretty good experience to be a lawyer, to be honest. But that's when I started looking into other things to do, something a bit more dynamic. I love building things. I love like creating products, putting ideas that I have out into the world. So software engineering made a lot of sense there. And I started studying on my own first. And then eventually I studied in a startup also, YC startup, which has had a lot of success. They were called Lambda School back then. They're now called Bloom Tech, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
So I was the first international student to actually enter that school. Back then, they were not accepting people outside of the US. I harassed their founder a little bit on Twitter until they let me in. They allowed me because they have a revenue share model where basically you don't pay when you get in, but you pay after you graduate if you get a job. You have an income share agreement, that ISA that they call. But of course, being that I'm not from the US, they could not sign me up and then legally pursue me if I didn't pay them. So I offered to pay up. Yeah, I offered to pay up front, and they ended up like accepting it. And I was the first international student. And that's more where I really gained more solid knowledge about software engineering. It's a really cool program. It mixes like a boot camp and like a software engineering degree. So there's a lot of theory as well. It's not like these typical boot camps that's a couple of weeks and they just teach you how to hack something. No, it's like a proper teaching. And yeah, it's about 2 years long. I studied them. Started working at a couple of legal techs. And then, eventually I started getting better software engineering jobs, and I landed at Synthesis School before starting Kuroro, and ended up being a tech lead there. So really very nice background, a bit crazy, but yeah.
I love it. I love it. That's how you get ready to be a founder, is you got to get all those different experience. And honestly, having the law background has got to be huge, given that you're a founder in a kind of strange regulatory environment around Web3. And I imagine that's helping you out quite a bit. So it's cool background. And then when did you guys start talking about this? Like, when you mentioned you and your co-founder are working together, when did this idea come up? Was it like general, we want to do something in Web3, or was it like, I want to do this specific thing? How did it start?
Yeah. So me and my co-founder, we were working at one of the legal techs I was at together, and basically they hired him. And once he came into my team, I was like, oh my God, this guy is like brilliant. What is he doing here almost? And very soon they made him like tech lead there. Probably after a week, it was clear to everyone that he was like excellent at what he does. So afterwards, when I left and I joined Synthesis, like the first thing I did, I talked to my director of engineering, and I was like, I have this friend who's like insane. Like interview him and then make your own judgment. And they, of course, interviewed him, and they were like mind blown. Like, we want to hire him. We want him to be like tech lead of this team, and you tech lead of this other team. So then we started working there. We started getting exposure to building games. We worked there for about a year or so. We're building these games, these simulations. And at the same time, the gold rush was beginning, and we were having a lot of fun. Being longtime gamers and lovers of new technology, of course, we were like checking out these different projects, losing a lot of money at first, and then starting to accumulate some NFTs, collect here and there. And the first like proto Web3 gaming projects started to come out. Your CryptoKitties, your EtherOrgs, like projects like that, right? Even smalls. And we started participating in those, having a lot of fun. It reminded me of my childhood, like playing almost like online forum games, like text-based and stuff. And we were having a lot of fun. And we were like, hey, what if we like create a project of our own? Let's create a game, like something similar to Pokemon, but in Web3. I know that now there's like a million like Pokemon-esque creature collecting like Web3 projects. Back then, there were not that many, or the only one was Axie. We started there. And to be honest, it was a surprise to us because the project the idea started gaining a lot of traction. And we ended up hiring artists to create like the initial characters and designers to help us and whatnot while we build like the first parts of the product. While we were working at Synthesis, and at one point it got so big that it was like people were begging us to do a mint or something like that. We're like, okay, this is getting pretty serious. Are we gonna half-ass both things, or are we actually gonna like take the leap here and start like our own thing? So we decided for it, and we left some very comfortable and exciting positions, to be honest, to start this project, but it just felt right. We were having so much fun and designing our own thing. And that's where we started, to be honest.
Okay, very cool. When did you launch the first mint, or like when would you like when was it that you'd say you had the project and you went all in?
Yeah, so we started in like late October, early November 2021, and our
Mhm.
first mint. So by January, we already had some parts of the product built, a lot of the marketing, a lot of the initial designs for the art. And
Mhm.
we decided, okay, let's decide, let's have a small mint at a not very high price back then for the
Mhm.
prices that things were minting out back then. At least
Sure.
but
Yeah.
now it might seem expensive. It was a point 15 ETH mint for 700 golden tickets that we called them, which were
Okay.
like the premium entry point to our ecosystem. And they sold out in like half a second, right?
Yeah.
So
Wild
that
times.
already like, yeah, super wild times. And everything was selling back then, to be honest. But at the
Yep.
same time, like we had a super large following. We knew that we were building something with consistency and with high quality in mind. And it was like the confirmation that we needed and the funding that we needed to make that jump. It was not
Yep.
a lot of funding, but it was like enough like for us to risk it. So that, yeah, that's basically where we started. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. So you're a year and
Yeah.
a half really into the journey. So then let's jump into the post then. So you put out this thing. There's only people only see about 5% of what we do behind the scenes on these projects. So first question is like, what prompted that post? What were you thinking that day? Why did you put that out there in the first place?
It's a good question. I would have to go back and ask the sage from that day because I don't actually remember what was going on. Sometimes, yeah, you have some arguments or you're like talking about things with different people, sometimes people from your community that you know that are big supporters but are getting a bit anxious sometimes about waiting. And yeah, it's a feeling that you generally get when you're managing like a live project. You're doing like live ops, but you're also
Yep.
like developing something from scratch, from zero, which is like things take time to build. And everything that we put out, of course, people only see like the finished result, but everything
Yep.
that goes to achieve that happens behind stages is like an insane amount of work. And I
Yeah.
think that's what prompted it. Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but something like that probably.
Yeah, I could see that. And that's certainly something that any founder is going to have to deal with, especially if you're building. And this is a very public facing space. And you tend to be
Yeah.
building in the public and with people in the Discord. And like the community is very active and evolved in a lot of ways, which is one of the things that drew me in. I really like that. But I could see how that would be challenging at
Yeah.
times when people are like, why is nothing happening? Why is nothing coming? Why aren't you delivering? Like, whatever the complaints are. And you're like,
Yes.
we had good days over here. We're making a lot of progress. Things are happening. So I could see that kind of
Yeah.
sentiment being something you need to deal
It's
with
like,
from time to time.
yeah, so it's, to be honest, it's like a self-inflicted pain in a way because there's different approaches to building something from scratch with a live community. Most projects in Web3 feel almost the responsibility and need to maintain live operations and a community, a live community
Hmm.
interaction as they develop. And it's really from most projects are doing it, they're developing from scratch, and building games takes years, right? So it's super hard and you are putting a lot of weight on top of you, which makes like something hard even harder, creating games and even more
Right.
Web3 games. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like maintaining a live community. But now I'm saying like other projects that sometimes like at the beginning were called rocks and whatnot because they like minted out some Genesis pass or Genesis characters, and then they decided to, we're not gonna live ops this, we're just gonna go into development mode. And
Right.
of course, holders got very frustrated over that time. But now they're coming back with finished products without all the weight of having had to support like live operations during this time, and sometimes even
Yeah.
making more progress because of that. And now that they're coming back, like people are super excited about them. And so it's different like decisions that you make. And yeah, I'm not sure if I would start over from scratch, I would do it in the same way that we have approached it now because it's super, super hard and stressful.
Yeah. I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that a few times from founders. Exactly
Yeah.
that is that it really makes it a lot more difficult. So do you think, because given like there is this, a lot of times this expectation that there is going to be some live ops and a lot of letting people see what's going on behind the scenes and seeing early prototypes, things like that. Do you think that if you made it clear, manage expectations from the beginning that you were not going to do that, that you could get close to the best of both worlds, like where it said, here's what we're going to give you and here's when we're going to give it to you, when it's not going to be kind of day to day. You think you can do that and a community will accept that?
I think you nailed it there. It's all about managing expectations.
Yep.
Like a mea culpa here. We didn't start being the best at that. And we've learned over time how to deal with expectations better and how to present things that we're doing in a better framing so that expectations are met and they are not like overblown. And I think that, we made a lot of mistakes at the beginning with that. And if it's an implicit promise or almost like an explicit promise in some cases in the end, where you're saying, if you're very explicit and you're saying like, hey, we're going to mint this and there's going to be nothing for 2 years, but then it's going to be awesome. People that are entering that contract, they're agreeing to that. So they're going to be fine with it, I think. But when we started, like we've had to adapt a lot as well, because when we started, again, we were in the EtherOrgs kind of era. And games were more focused towards like GameFi, right? Even Axie or other projects that I remember back then, like Crypto Riders, EtherOrgs, things like that, were the only like Web3 gaming product projects. And everything was around like GameFi. And we started there as well. And as we were developing in the early stages, the whole GameFi system came crashing down, and that's when everyone started demonizing play to earn and whatnot. And we realized, these models that are out there, that we are like doing something similar to them, are not working. They're not sustainable. So like we have to change what the approach, right? If we want to create like a sustainable environment. And that meant that we had to pivot from some of those initial like promises, but at the same time, you already have them there. So we made like a compromise, which is, okay, we're going to develop like quality products that are like self-sustainable because they're just good games. But at the same time, we're going to try to keep like something running from time to time that people can experience and experiment, because that was in a way what we promised at the beginning. It was tough, right?
Yeah.
We had to make several adjustments on the way in this nascent industry, and as many have had to do. And I think that, like everything considered, we've done a pretty good job of balancing all of these things together, but it's really hard and stressful as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I totally see that. So like coming into this then, getting back to that 95%, and managing this is part of that 95% that people don't necessarily see, is the stress, dealing with the stress and kind of the discussions with the team about how to deal with all these issues, et cetera. But like what else is going on behind there? And I guess, let me frame the question a little bit, is when you got into this, how much of the 95% was a surprise to you and your co-founder versus expected stuff? Because you came from a startup, so you at least had some idea, right? But how much of this were you ready for, and how much of it was a surprise?
To be honest, we were pretty ready in terms. We have been working in startups for the last 5-6 years, so we know what it takes. We know how to build things from scratch. We know how to build fast. At the same time, of course, we were pretty new to games. So on that side, what surprised me, I could say, is that, building games is incredibly hard. It's probably the hardest thing you could build are games, especially multiplayer games, especially if you add a Web3 layer on top of that. You're basically, the way I explain it usually is you're building a world from scratch, right? You're building like a scenario, a story. You are doing the art, you are doing the programming, you have to build games, you have to build like apps, you have to add like Web3 to this. So basically it's so interdisciplinary that it almost encompasses everything. You have an economic system. So it's like economy, art, story, programming, like game development, like it's everything really. You're really like building, creating a world from nothing. So the community management, everything. So building games is super, super hard. And it's like every people always say with startups, it's good that you don't know how hard it is at the beginning, because if you knew it, maybe you wouldn't even get into it. At the same time, it's been incredibly fun, and we really have enjoyed the journey and keep enjoying it like so much. So but basically we know how hard it is to build startup, but when you are adding like games on top of that, it's like exponentially harder, I think.
Yeah, right on. You just said something that I always have concern about, because you said if I had known some of the stuff, it might have been harder to dive in, right? Like almost the ignorance helps you get started sometimes. So I do fear if I share too many of your stories that I might discourage somebody from diving in who otherwise would have been blissfully unaware until it was too late. So nobody quit as a result of this. This is to help you go.
No, yeah. The thing is, you have to enjoy the journey. You have to like accept it. Like you've seen, like I've been all over. Like I've made a lot of career switches in my life, and I generally just approach things as just let's do it. I don't even want to know if it's hard or not. Let's just do it. And if the road you find out, but at the same time, like if you have confidence in your skills and if you trust the process and if you're having fun, like. It doesn't matter. It's hard, but it's entertaining. So that's what matters to me, at least.
Yeah, right on. So what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions to people out there who aren't founders looking at what you do on a day-to-day basis? Again, this is in that post, right? Talking about some of the different stuff. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions about being a Web3 gaming founder in particular?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. So some are common to like any startup, and some are common to like any game with a live op and a community, and some are related to the Web3 world, which now has changed like quite a bit. I want to start there. So when we started, like Web3 was literally, it still is a little bit, but back then it was literally like the Wild West. So everything was a bit crazy, untidy, super, sometimes even a bit shady, right? And we were even accused like a couple of times by people that even collaborated with us of being like too professional, right? No, really. Like I actually got called like by a former like team member, like you guys are too professional. Like what the fuck? We don't do that. Yeah, almost like that. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like we're building like a startup. We're serious people. Like So yeah, that was the standard back then. So just so you understand, and we're used to something different. We're used to like Silicon Valley startups like that, and we have a very thorough development process, which is we scope things. Think we have an idea, of course. There's a notion of something that we must do that's tied to the vision that we have, which is where everything starts, and then from that notion comes certain product ideas that stem from that. And with those product ideas, we create pitches that are written documents that we share with the team, that anyone in the team is allowed or encouraged to create, which are basically product ideas that are well written, have a certain structure to them, and that initiate like a discussion phase for if we want to bet on something or not. And after a certain pitch is approved, we have technical scoping done by the engineers. What is this going to take? What does it mean? Which system does it involve? How much time would it take? Then we bet on certain of those pitches if they pass technical scoping and they pass like the initial approval stage. Yeah. And on that, we distribute that on different like stages, tasks, subtasks, whatever it takes to build them into actual things, right? And so back then, I guess people were not used to seeing that too much in Web3. It was a lot more messy. Right. And that's one thing I would say, like in terms of nowadays, I don't think it happens that much. Like usually Web3 founders and projects are held to a very high standard nowadays, in most cases at least. Yep.
Yeah, it's getting better.
It should be like that, of course. And,
there's a lot of money going on here. It absolutely should be.
There's a lot of
some controls
and there was more
responsibility and accountability, all those good things. I think that's a good thing for the space.
So we were like doxing earlier, or not even caring about if to dox or not. Like we were just like sharing openly our names or faces in interviews or whatever. People were like, "Oh, you're doxed," like, or even in a private call, like you showed your face and your name, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm not gonna." And I was like, "Whatever, I respect whatever you want to do, but I have nothing to hide here." And we've always been that way, and we're very professional about what we do. And there's some expectations sometimes with that, with Web3, as crazy as it sounds, because people sometimes just operate in different ways. But nowadays it's more like common ground. And yeah, from a community with live ops and where you have like games running live, you have a community running live. At the same time, you're developing different like pitches and products and you're working the backstage and trying to also manage how you communicate things and timelines and when you're going to push something out to market and what's the go-to-market strategy in terms of communication, marketing, whatnot. I think a lot of people, are just like, sometimes as a founder, you just get a bit tired of hearing the when constantly.
Yeah, sure.
And you guys are, you guys like fucked up in this and in this other thing. And really, we're trying our best. We're professionals. We're doing like a super high effort here. And so part of that frustration or that post was also that I wanted to show, hey, this is how we work. Like we have our first hub is like Notion, where everything is written down and documented. And we have like thousands of pages in Notion in several different categories, from like internal guides, external guides, articles, engineering, planning, product design, game design, meetings, interviews, like so many things that we document, and is where everything starts. So I think I showed it to someone and they were like, "Oh my God, like this is impressive." So I thought, okay, I'm gonna share this so people like understand how professional people operate, which to me is not like that crazy, but it's good giving a sense as well. At the same time, it's a bit of a flex and a bit of like a showcase to people. Hey, like we are doing a lot, right? But that's I guess where some of that come from as well.
Yeah, right on. I think it's a great approach. So you're letting the ideas come from anywhere. You're letting the ideas be crazy. You're letting the ideas be off the wall, whatever. But then they have to go through a process. And it's like when the idea lands, this is what we do with it. And that, like, being able to do that predictably, repeatedly, like in a way that everybody on your team understands what the hell's going on. Think about how does this fit into the big picture. And then I like the framing too of that you decide what to make bets on. Because you never know what's going to work out. And you can't plan for all the eventualities. Like you have to do this basic stuff and say, yeah, this fits in. This is worth betting on. And then you got to go do it. And then things play out the way that they play out. So I like that framing a lot. I think that's a good way for people to think about it. So you mentioned Notion a couple of times as a tool. What other tools do you think are indispensable for you in a day-to-day in terms of just keeping everything in front of you and being able to communicate with your team and to execute on this process?
Yeah, of course. There are some things that are like basically a given at this point, like a Git system, of course, like Git in our case, GitHub in our case, and then the engines that we use to like make the games, for example, Unity, Game Maker that we've also used. But then you need like somewhere to organize information. To us, that's Notion. And by the way, like you were saying something very interesting there. To me, like there's many approaches and there's like several different like systems for developing products. To me, I love Basecamp's approach with ShapeUp. Like there's like they have a mini book that's 100-page long, and it's really good. I love working like that. It's much better than other systems that I've tried. And I encourage people to check it out. It's called ShapeUp. The book is free. It's like online. It's like a very interesting way of working little bets, and I love it. But Notion, of course, to document, to like create pitches, document things. Then as task management tool, we use Notion for some time because it's super flexible. I'm a big Notion fan, to be honest.
Okay.
We used it for a little while for project management as well, but nowadays we're using ClickUp, which is more like specific to project management. ClickUp, really cool tool. It's project management tool basically. Then I use a lot Excalidraw, especially when putting together ideas. It's like an online whiteboard, right? You can write down things fast and create shapes and add images and basically ideate. It's good for that. We use Figma. Figma so much is one of the most important tools probably that we use internally for design, right? Working with designers, with artists, like creating the wireframes especially for everything that we do on the web side of things, on web applications. Figma is just, it's such a good product. It's so good. It's collaborative. Nowadays, it even has a system where you can like have the designers design things and you can check like the code that turns out to translate to and use that in your code editor. So it
that's
makes
awesome.
working between designers and engineers super easy. We also have hundreds of Figma pages for everything that we've done. Of course, yeah, our artists use their own tools, like pixel artists use Sprite or whatever they need to use. What else do we use on a day-to-day basis? For calendaring and meetings and stuff, Google Calendar is, of course, the most common, I think, solution there. We use Zoom. I personally don't like Google Meet too much, so we use Zoom a lot internally as our meeting software.
I'm with you on that.
And then Discord is what we ended up using for team organization, which initially I hated. And I hated the idea of using the same place where we like run our projects, our community as where we have our personal organization. I thought that was going to be like very messy. And I was a big Slack fan back then. But like we started using it, and nowadays I love Discord. It's like a lot more lightweight, and once you get used to it, it's good enough. Our syncs, our daily syncs, things like that, we do that in the same like Discord. We have our internal Discord, and yeah, we're very used to it nowadays.
Nice. And how many people do you have on the team these days?
Right now, we have 10 people full time, and then we have about five to seven people that are either quarter time, part-time, or just, quarter time, part-time. And then we have a bunch of other contractors that come and go, artists, music, art, pixel artists, concept artists, like mostly related to like artwork. Also, we have a professional, competitive Pokemon player that's like a world champion that started being a full-time team member. Yeah, that create like our battling and combat system and synergies.
Nice.
He's like one of the most knowledgeable people in the world about it.
Yeah, you can't do much better than that.
Yeah, and now, so there's people that started like full time. When we started, like we had 3 actually competitive Pokemon players, and we had them all. When we started designing this, we were like, we don't know how to build like a competitive, like a creature collecting game that's really like works in a competitive environment. So let's look for people that know. So we hired 3 competitive Pokemon BGC players, which is like the world circuit where these guys play, and ended up like keeping one, the world champion and more knowledgeable one, as a long-time team member. He was a full-time team member for the past almost year and a half. But nowadays, we have a lot of responsibilities with like that part of the product has already been like designed and lifted, and most of it is done, and you can't have guys just like hanging around without doing anything, of course, if you want to run a serious operation. So we keep them around as like contractors and give them work or tasks based on the ongoing needs. For example, on the art side, we have a huge art lift for the past year and a half, and then most of the art is done, and it's mostly working on animations and other things. And we had 6 artists, but now like we have 2, and the other are like contractors. The requirements when building games change a lot over time. We started at the like all-time high. We probably had like 22 full-time members. Now we have like 10 full-time members.
Pretty good size team.
In total, probably 20 now, if you count like quarter-time, part-time, and contractors.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, and this is a huge part of the 95%, right? Is managing all those people. You got to find them. You got to employ them, all the HR stuff that's involved with it. There's just dealing with people issues, right? Like it's not always just even work issues. Like when you're building the team, you got to deal with all that stuff. So that's probably a huge portion of your 95% there, I imagine. So as you look at your day-to-day, what's something that you as a founder right now today are spending more time on than you would like to be?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In general, I'm quite good at delegating. So I still have several roles that I have in the company. So nowadays, I'm CEO, but really what I do like day to day, I'm like product lead, mostly in charge of like high level stuff like vision and high level pitches. And then we have amazing people that grab that and turn it into actually shape them up into actual like products or projects. I'm in charge of what you were just saying, people management. Like I'm like head of HR nowadays, if we even would have a department. That definitely consumes a lot of time, but I feel like it's hard to delegate it. It's hard at this stage, and it also doesn't make being so small, like having a dedicated like HR person or something like that. I just suck it up and I do it, even though it's not like one of my favorite things. I also like right now I am in charge of the operations at a high level, but then we have someone that I delegate a lot of stuff to as well, like a personal assistant. And yeah, I'm lead researcher as well. But again, then like I have in several departments, like I have people that are really good at helping me with those things. So Wild Wizard is like our community manager, but he's also like researcher. So whenever I want to find out something about a project or what's happening with something, like I ask him to like create like a little document and he shares it with me. So in general, I try to delegate as much as I can. What the things that I found that at this size I cannot delegate are like people operations, the legal, like I personally deal with like lawyers that we hire and things like that. I'm also a lawyer, so that helps a little
you have the
bit.
expertise.
And yeah, and the key thing I would say is like marketing / being the face, like what we're doing right now. So talking about the project, then leading like the marketing efforts and public facing side of things. I think that those things you cannot delegate at this size. Yeah. So product vision, people, and the marketing. I think those three things, like at this stage, you cannot delegate them basically.
Got it. What do you wish you could spend more time on? All things being equal, what's the thing that you're not getting to as much that you'd really like to?
Oh my God. Yeah. I really have my don't want to sound controlling, but I have my hands on so many things in the project that I really feel comfortable in the position that I'm at right now. If I could choose, I would loosen up a little bit more even on the operation and people side, like dealing with managing all of that and focus even harder on like product, which is what I really love. I haven't touched a line of code in like the past 2 years because like we have people that are working full time as engineers. And to be honest, like I'm fine. I thought I was gonna miss it more. I'm fine. I found out like my suspicions were confirmed that what I like the most is like product, like building products, designing product vision. So I'm quite happy with where I'm at right now, actually. Yeah. And we have some amazing people on the game side. We have an amazing game director, an amazing lead game designer, and I was doing a lot of that in the early stages. And if I could correct something, like, and this is, I'm going to talk about like specific to gaming because it's where we're at, but this like applies to everything, I would guess, is if you're in a certain industry that you don't have expertise in, even if you're good at like building products and building like engineering systems and have good notions for that, go as quickly as you can and find like key hires that are like specific to the industry that you're in. So if you create like a real estate startup,
matter expertise,
exactly. So the biggest unlock for us, for me and my co-founder, who is our CTO, has been finding Josh and David, who are like the game director and lead game designer. They really took things to another level, and we could not do that ourselves. So yeah, definitely.
Got it. Okay, very cool. So just give us a quick breakdown, like what's coming next for Kuroro Beasts? What should people be on the lookout for?
So right now we're in a key point in our development. I want to say we are almost 1.5 to 2 years in. We have a lot of products that we've been working on for a long time that are like almost ready to be like released in their like first versions. We have an RPG called Kuroro Beasts, which is we're about to release. You mentioned this escape and this little slice that's episode 1, which is really 5 minutes of gameplay. But now we're releasing like the alpha version, which is going to be like 2+ hours of story and like infinite repeatable content of a creature collecting game RPG with like action combat. So it's like an innovative concept. There's no real like creature collecting game with real-time action combat. Usually they're turn-based or they're like the combat is like some form of like auto battler in real time or whatever it is. This is actually you controlling like a beast and like fighting in real time against enemies. So it's really cool. We're about to release the alpha for that. We're about to release the 3rd version. So season 3 for Beast Ball, which is like our web turn-based creature battler. You can think about like traditional Pokemon fights against other people, which we already have had 2 releases of, and people like love it. we're about to launch this profile picture collection that we have been working on for a year plus with a very popular artist, JMW, who's part of our full-time team, and it's looking amazing.
It does. They look great.
All of this is encompassed within a bigger dynamic that we're calling Play to Airdrop. From November till like late February, mid-March, something like that. So the next 4 or 5 months, people are going to be participating in our ecosystem. People are going to participate for achievements that are in your collector profile that are tied to collecting beasts, collecting ancients, playing beast role, and playing Kuroro Wilds, and several achievements. And we have an experience system that's like ecosystem wide. And people will be leveling up their accounts. And the higher you level, the better your ranking will be for an upcoming, like our token generation event, our first airdrop that we're doing for our community. So we think that's going to be like quite fun, and that it should probably bring a lot of people into our ecosystem. So yeah, we're very excited for that. It's going to be super crazy because we're going to be live opening like 4 products at the same time. But we've been preparing for this. But we've been preparing for this for a long time as well. So yeah, it's like the first time that we're really like launching like the first version of what our full working ecosystem will look like. It's going to be
getting really real now for you. Very nice.
That's
awesome.
Really
it sounds it sounds really unique. The play to airdrop and all that. I've never heard obviously that term before. So yeah, cool to see you guys experimenting with a new way to do it. But yeah, that's gonna be exciting to watch you drop a whole bunch of stuff all at once. So this has been awesome. I appreciate the time. Thank you for coming to share with the listener about the day-to-day, about some of that grind stuff that goes on behind the scenes. I think just when you're building something, we touched on earlier, is be aware of this stuff so that you're ready. Like, it's not all glamour, but you got to enjoy that too. That's all part of the journey. And if you can enjoy that day-to-day grind and see how it fits into this bigger thing, then you get to have the excitement that you're going to have coming up here in the next couple of weeks and months, launching all this stuff. And that's when the fun is really had. Thanks for letting everybody see a little bit behind the scenes there. Appreciate it. Where can people go to connect with you online?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at KuroSage. And of course, I'm super active in our Discord. So the Kuroro Beasts Discord, I'm like 27 almost, or like 16-7 there. And yeah, I'm every day just chatting with everyone. We have a channel where people can ask me questions directly as well. So super open.
Awesome.
And easy to find, to be honest. Yeah.
All right, very cool. I enjoy your X feed quite a bit. I think you do a great job on there. I liked you before I met you from that, so yeah, it's definitely working. So thank you again for the time, and best of luck to you with the big launches coming up.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, man.
Thank you for listening to Ready Layer 2. If you're an Arbitrum builder with a story to share, then hit me up on Twitter at GitSmall, GITSMOL. Learn more at getsmall.com.